Good morning and welcome to Luntha TV. It's yet another edition of our press review program coming to you live today, Wednesday the 13th of July in the year of 2022. Today you'll be with me, Nfra, and I'll be checking you through the publications of the Nation and the Daily Times. To begin with the Nation newspaper, on the front page, we have Moli Muhara in over 5 billion kwacha deal. That's the main headline. The subheadline reads, Attorney General says amount revised to 30 billion Malawi kwacha. Partly the story says, police yesterday arrested former secretary to the president and the cabinet, Lloyd Muhara, and business magnate Lester Moli for their alleged involvement in a deal to settle a 5 billion kwacha loan over a 50-year period. National Police Deputy Spokesperson Harry Namaza confirmed the arrest of the two in an interview yesterday, but asked for more time to get details on the charges. Still on the front page, we have Chokora launches M1 rehab, warns MDAs. Partly the story says the President Lazarus Chokora has given government ministries, departments and agencies MDAs up to August 31, 2022 to provide information on the progress of infrastructure projects under their offices or face unspecified consequences. Speaking at Madisi in Doha yesterday when he launched the rehabilitation works for sections of the M1 between Lumbazi and Chiweta, the president, in a highly charged tone, expressed disappointment with a lack of accountability on the progress of projects implemented by public institutions contrary to the requirements of the law and other guidelines. Moving on to the second page of the Nation newspaper, we have a state concedes a teen sentence excessive. Partly the story says the state has considered that convicted teenager Musa John's 8-year custodial sentence by Limbi Magistrates Court for illegal possession of Indian hemp weighing 134 kilograms was excessive. Ministry of Justice Senior State Advocate Giftum Sume said this in the High Court of Malawi yesterday during the review of the case file following Acting Blantyre Chief Resident Magistrate Chisomo Nsokera's recommendation. He said while the Magistrates Court followed procedure in convicting and sentencing the convict, there were some minor errors made but can be addressed by Section 3 and 5 of the Criminal Procedure and the Evidence Code. And on the fourth page, product allows government to issue stronger penalties, fines, and jail sentences as a disincentive to illegal forest activity. Maximum penalties can reach 5 million kwacha or 20 years imprisonment, depending on the severity of the crime. And still on the fourth page, we have COVID-19 kills 4 people in 11 days. Partly the story says Malawi has registered 4 COVID-19 deaths in 11 days out of 219 cases reported. Statistics from the Public Health Institute of Malawi show. In a statement issued on Monday, the institute says currently 13 cases are admitted to the country's treatment units. The situation has ignited calls from health experts for the country to continue observing preventive measures and lobbying people to get vaccinated against the infection. And moving on, here we have institutions of higher learning tasked to provide solutions. Partly the story says the Ministry of Education, Agnes Nyalonje, has challenged the higher education institutions to do more research to help address problems facing the education sector and the country as a whole. The minister made the appeal in Lilongwe yesterday when she engaged the top management of public higher education institutions to discuss challenges in the education sector, research, financing, and other issues. And another one says Malawi troops decorated in DRC. Partly the story says Malawi Defense Force MDF troops serving on the United Nations UN peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo, MONUSCO, have made decorated have been decorated rather for their gallant service in that country. The troops under Malawi Battalion 13 were awarded for satisfactorily fulfilling the period for the eligibility of the provision of the medal at an event which took place on July 6 at Bokini Malawi Contingent Permanent Operating Base in Beni. And here we have a minister asked women to promote each other. Deputy Minister of Local Government Halima Dawoodi has asked women in the country to stop pulling each other down, but instead collectively work towards promoting one another. The minister made the call on Saturday in Mzuzu when she presided over this year's Women in Local Government conference. Dawoodi said most women do not support fellow women and waste time gossiping about each other. Now moving on to some business news in this paper. We have Ministry opts for Nfra in amazing deal. That's the main headline. The sub-headline says ADMAC sidelined. Partly the story says Ministry of Agriculture has opted to work with the National Food Reserve Agency Nfra in buying maize this year instead of the State Produce Trader Agricultural Development and Marketing Corporation ADMAC. Already, Treasury has dispersed 12 billion kwacha to Nfra to buy the staple grain for the Strategic Grain Reserves SUR, a move that has irked ADMAC and the Parliamentary Committee on Agriculture. ADMAC and the Parliamentary Committee argued that the move has the potential to disrupt maize market dynamics and stifle smallholder farmers' participation in the selling of the commodity. Still on the business section, we have cooking oil prices remain high, a ministry says. Partly the story says Ministry of Trade and Industry says rising commodity prices have undermined the anticipated gains from the issuance of cooking oil import permits. In a written response on Monday, the ministry's spokesperson Maisom Sokela said cooking oil prices have remained high despite opening the window for imports due to global fuel price surge and failure by local manufacturers to remove value-added tax VAT on the commodity. Msokera said the ministry has launched investigations against some of the cooking oil manufacturers for their conduct, and that should they be found on the wrong side of the law, they will be punished according to the provisions of the Competition and Fair Trading Act. Now we'll take a look at some international stories. Here we have a WHO urges better use of vaccines. Partly the story says the World Health Organization, WHO, yesterday urged member countries to make better use of vaccines and accelerate the development of vaccines to prevent infections caused by antimicrobial resistant bacterial pathogens. In an emailed press statement, the health agency said the silent pandemic of antimicrobial resistance is of major growing public health concern, with resistant bacterial infections alone associated with more than 4.95 million deaths every year. And another one, we have a refugee body hails Olympic gold medalist. Partly the story says the Refugee Council has held Olympic gold medalist Mo Farah for revealing how he was trafficked as a child. The council said on the Twitter page that they applaud Mo Farah for his bravery in telling his heartbreaking story. He underlines the human reality at the heart, and so many stories like his and the desperate need for safe and humane routes for people seeking asylum. The remarks follow Farah's revelation that he was flown over from Djibouti to Britain at the age of 9 by a woman he had never met and was forced to work as a domestic servant looking after another family's children. And now we'll take a look at some of arts and culture stories appearing in today's publication. We have Pen Malawi translates 1962 book into Chichewa. Partly, the story says Pen Malawi has translated a 1962 book titled Invisible Child into Chichewa. The book is currently being used in selected primary schools in Luntha, such as Kapeni Demonstration, Naocha, Kachanga, and Nansengwa. Pen Malawi President Alfred Msadala said in an interview on the sidelines of a media briefing in Luntha on Monday that the translation of the book is part of a project the association is focusing on this year. Another one reads, Gwamba dedicates album sales to charity. Partly, the story says gospel hip-hop artist Gwamba has dedicated CD sales from his new album True Independence towards helping underprivileged children under Pashela Charitable Trust in Chikwawa District. The artist released his third gospel album last Wednesday and printed just 50 CDs. He says he intends to raise about 4 million kwacha from the CD sales, which he will in turn donate to the charity organization. Moving to the back page for some sports stories, here we have teams set to beef up. That's the main headline. The subheadline says, as the transfer window reopens. Partly, the story says, with the transfer window now open, most TNM Super League clubs have hinted at beefing up their squads in readiness for the second round. The clubs say they have engaged their technical panels to guide them on which areas need strengthening. Champions and leaders Nyasa Big Bullets say they are waiting for guidance from their coach Kalitso Pasua. Another one still on the back page, we have Marinika spies on Mambas, Zambia. Partly, the story says Flames coach Maria Marinika has remained at Hollywood Bet COSAFA Cup to spy on Malawi's potential opponents in Africa Nations champions Chan, Mozambique, and Zambia. The Flames were drawn against Zimbabwe, but following a FIFA ban on the Warriors, which is yet to be lifted less than 2 weeks before the qualifiers kick off, Malawi is tipped to progress to the second round, where they will face the winner between Mozambique's Mambas and Zambia's Chipolo Polo. And in netball, we have Malawi out to end 4-year absence from Queens. Partly, the story says Australia-based netball star Malawi Kumwena is set to end her 4-year absence from national duty when she joins the Malawi Queens squad next Monday ahead of the 2022 Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, United Kingdom. The Queens went into camp yesterday in Lilongwe. In an interview yesterday, the Melbourne Vixens shooter said the initial plans were to join the Queens in Birmingham, but she will now travel home to join the squad. And moving on to some international sports stories, we have unbeaten Banyana face Stern test. Partly, the story says South Africa's bid to win the first ever Women's Africa Cup of Nations WAFCON title continues tomorrow when they face Tunisia at Moulay Hassan Stadium in Rabat, Morocco. Banyana may not have been clinical in their group stage games, but they have been in impressive form, having won all their games so far. And now I'll quickly take a look at some of the stories that are appearing in the Daily Times newspaper. On the front page, we have similar stories that are appearing in the Nation newspaper. But here we have a story on the fourth page which says the personnel shortage hits industrial relations court. Partly, the story says at least 250 cases are waiting hearing at the Mzuzu Industrial Relations Court, as currently the registry has no chairperson to adjudicate cases. This has been the case for the past 2 months as former deputy chairperson King Mulungu was promoted to another rank. According to an inside source, there is just an acting assistant registrar at the registry who does not have adjudicating powers. Another one appearing on the 5th page, we have Major threatens legal action against the MCP. Partly, the story says Fired Malawi Congress Party MCP member Alex Meja has written Party Secretary General Esnoan Kaka demanding his immediate reinstatement. In a letter dated July 7, 2022, Meja claims that rules of natural justice were not followed when expelling him from the party. But Kaka yesterday said he was yet to receive the letter from Meja. In his letter, Meja has reminded Nkaka of sections 33, subsection 1 and subsection 2, sections 34 and section 35 of the MCP constitution, which he claims the SG overlooked when expelling him from the governing party. And now some business stories that are appearing in the Daily Times newspaper. Here we have another policy rate hike looms. The subheadline says, as the industry prepares panic. Partly the story says Reserve Bank of Malawi RBM has hinted at another hike in the policy rate, the rate at which commercial banks borrow from the central bank as a lender of last resort, an option likely to make cost of borrowing further high. This will be the second time within 3 months after another policy rate adjustment was affected in May 2022 from 12% to 14%. And here we have Campbell Mining to commence in 2025. Partly the story says your listed mining firm, Campbell Resources Limited, is expecting to commence rare earths mining at its Songwe Hill rare earths mine in February 2022. In a statement published on its website recently, the mining firm says production ramping up is expected from July 2025, averaging 5,954 tons per year for total rare earth oxides with a long operating life of 18 years. And here we have silver on the back page, that is for some sports news. Silver in dilemma as farm bars unqualified coaches. Partly the story says Silver Strikers could be forced to demote interim coach McDonald Yobe following Football Association of Malawi Farms directive that unqualified coaches will not be allowed to lead teams in the top flight league effective this weekend. This directive comes as Silver are expected to face Dedza Dynamos FC in the round of 32 of the FDH Cup, Bank Cup at Dedza Stadium on Saturday. Yobe, who has Farm C coaching course, was named Silver interim coach after the club suspended coach Daniel Kabwe, paving the way for investigation. And that also brings us to the end of this edition of Press Review, which was coming to live here on Luntha TV Wednesday, the 13th of July in the year of 2022. Remember, we only took some of the stories that are appearing in today's publication. So for you to get more of what's inside and the details of the stories that we've picked so far, you can purchase the papers. Both they are going at 1,000 Malawi kwacha. And that's it from me, Alina Fipiri. Continue watching the rest of the programs right here on Luntha TV. Have a good morning.